now for the last couple of years, so we have a really strong working relationship. So Brains and Butter are very much well educated in the strategy of matching that perfect school for you, and then we come in with the dynamic expert tutors that will help you to secure that place. So I'm just going to share my presentation with you all today, and we'll make a start. Okay, so I'm here today with my colleague Larissa as well. So I'll just give you a brief background of myself, and then I will let Larissa do the same, just so you know who exactly you're talking to, what our areas of expertise are. So I graduated from the London School of Economics in Economics and Maths, and then went to work at the Bank of England. Following that, I dived straight into tuition, taking on many academic roles, running courses, running online courses, writing and examining. So my area of expertise is very much the boarding school entry, entrance examinations, interview preparation, all-round assistance to get your child into boarding school. So I've worked with many students, helping to get them into Eton and Harrow, for example, amongst others. Most recently, I've worked with a student called Derek alongside Brains and Butter, where he gained a scholarship into Harrow. So we had a great working relationship there in assisting Derek to go off into his scholarship at Harrow, and he's now there, I believe, having a wonderful time. I hand over to Larissa.
Hello everyone, I'm Larissa. I am a tutor with Inside Academy. And just a little bit about myself, I grew up in Hong Kong and I came to the UK for boarding school from year 9. So I came over when I was 13. I studied all the way from year 9 through to year 13 at school down in Kent, at a boarding school down in Kent. Did my GCSEs, did my A-levels. I fortunately got 3 A stars at A-levels, which is wonderful. And then I now do medicine at King's College London in the UK. In terms of my tutoring experience, I'm coming on to my 4th year of tutoring, I believe. So it's been a while. I started off teaching mostly chemistry and maths, GCSEs and A-levels, as well as some sort of beginner level English for students abroad. I've since branched out a bit, and I now also teach 11 plus and boarding school entrance exam preparation. So I'm doing a lot at the moment. Outside of sort of school and academics and work, I also think it's really important to do lots of hobbies and stuff for children, and everyone should do hobbies, I think. So I do lots of painting and pottery. I've recently started doing rock climbing, which is it's been a challenge. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. It's great to have Larissa here today because she's gone through the entire process coming from an international base into the UK system. So she has such a strong knowledge on that process, especially from a student child perspective as well. Thanks, Larissa. So just a very brief background about Insight and what we do. So Insight Academy has a sister company, Insight Education, as well. What we're here mainly today to talk about is the school entrance exams, which falls under Insight Academy. So our expertise lies in not only one-to-one tuition, but group tuition as well for entrance exams, interview technique, which we will come on to later. So Larissa has touched on this, which is so important about students not only carrying out their academic qualifications, but also delving into hobbies and interests. Extracurricular is a key area for boarding schools. They're looking to see what your child participates in. Not only that, the courses that we've listed on the board today are some of the courses that we offer which can help your child with soft skills. So it's very important to learn these soft skills that aren't taught by schools. So these are the skills where students learn confidence, where they can express themselves better, and that's what we help to build on with some of these courses. So these aren't taught within schools. They're where we've identified a gap that children are lacking. So interweaving these skills are deemed as really important in your child's personal development, and they go on to help them with future studies at university and their work life as well. So in the lockdown, these courses got launched due to the shift to being online, but now we're largely seeing the take up across the international market with these. So these are courses that are more designed to get those skills interweaved, which will shine through in their academic writing and also across their interviews. On the board are just some of the schools that we have assisted children to gain places at. So I touched upon Derek, who has recently come through Brains and Butter, and we worked in collaboration with Brains and Butter, and Derek gained a scholarship, in fact, at Harrow. At the moment, I'm also working with a student who's looking at gaining a place at Charterhouse. So a student, Emily, gaining 16+ entry into Charterhouse. So we're working on all of the different examinations that she'll be presented with at 16+, which is a topic of discussion today that we're going to look at, as the 16+ system is slightly different to the other examinations. So Emily's got subject-based exams to sit within economics and maths, as well as interviews, but I'll touch more on that later today, so you have more of awareness of how 16+ works, as it can be quite a minefield. But our tutors are all have various experiences with assisting children. So it may not be your Eton, your Harrow, it may be the smaller independent schools that are better suited to your child, and we have tutors that have worked closely with those schools as well. I think across our tutor base, we pretty much cover a very large range of schools that our tutors have worked with and know the systems and what interview questions that pop up. That's the good thing with having a wide range of tutors and them having taught so many students, is that we can get a real feel of what to expect at that interview and what questions are being asked to our students. So I'm sure you're all well aware of this and that our thoughts are aligned with this already, but just to touch on reasons as to why a UK boarding school is a good option. So we all have busy families and work life, and knowing that the pastoral care in the UK system is there is a great relief. So we know that there is that great support for your child. They are very much driven to accelerating the growth of our students. They work with them very closely to bring out different skills that they may not otherwise be exposed to. The teachers within the UK system, especially within the boarding school sector, are very passionate teachers, highly qualified. They know how to really teach our students well. There's also a breadth of experiences, opportunities, and networks available. So children are opened up to meeting an international base. They have the sense of a very large community. They learn from different cultures, they learn to integrate well, which is great for university especially. So that familiarization with the British language and culture as well helps with gaining a place within UK university, and it also helps them with their future studies and life, especially within work. One of the key things that I believe is so important within boarding schools is that international base. They learn so much from different students, and they are able to learn how to communicate with others exceptionally well. And that comes across them within their university applications, interviews, and when they go on to a future career. So today, what we are going to cover are the various types of exams that your student may, or your child may encounter. Okay, so the three key areas are UKISET, CAT4 and UKISET, aside from the 16+ entry, which works slightly different. Okay, so it can be very much a minefield on how to know which exam your child will be sitting, what will be covered, and that's what we're going to look at today. So this is a very key point, starting early and preparing in advance. So success comes with that long-term planning. Now, the registration deadlines alone for boarding schools can be up to 3 years in advance. So for example, with Harrow, the deadline is actually the 1st of May in year 6 for entry at year 9 level. So it does require a lot of preparation and making sure that you are registered. The registration also provides a lot of key information then, such as what exams your child will be sitting. So schools can have their own entrance exams, or they can adapt a mixture of exams that we will look at and see what they cover. So with that registration deadline, you will then be given a timeline as well as what exams to expect. So many people apply to several schools. Naturally, you would want to do that just in case you don't get your first choice, which isn't something we like to think about, but we do approach it in that way. That is the norm. So that could mean various types of entrance exams being sat. Okay, but there are overlaps in some of them which can assist children in that verbal reasoning, for example, might be covered in 2 different types of exams. But those registration details, first of all, making sure that a deadline is met is super, super important. Then from there, you get all of the information, the timelines, so then you can put a plan in place. So your children will benefit from commencing their studies as early as possible. So the suggested route, especially within the UK, it's always been recommended 2 to 3 years preparation. Now, how that might look to you is having weekly sessions with various tutors to prepare. Then what we do like to recommend also is in the summer leading up to that academic year of sitting those entrance exams, a more intense period of study. And we also start to implement the interview technique there as well, not to leave that last minute, as your interviews come after you sit the examinations, but it can be quite a short gap in between. So it's important to start the interview preparation side early as well, but we'll touch upon interviews later. So that's how your studies might look. Obviously, we all have a nature to be quite last minute. It's human nature, but trying to implement preparation and a plan that will really assist with success you have to remember that your students are going to be competing with not only UK students, but also students from across the globe. So they can be quite tough competition. And we also want them to feel confident and relaxed approaching those exams and interviews. And the way to do that is preparation. They feel confident in their studies and their interview technique, and they feel comfortable then going forward. So there are tailored approaches that we can take, not one size fits all at all. And we are flexible with working with brains and butter to ensure your child is well prepared for those specific exam dates. So all schools are going to present different times that they would like your students, your children, to sit those exams, and we will work with you alongside brains and butter towards those dates, and we will put that plan into place. Now, scholarship application, we've touched upon Derek, he's a shining example. That requires a much more intense program of study. So if you would like your child to aim towards a scholarship, then we would need to put more rigorous studies into place, and preparation is even more vital in that instance. So 2 to 3 years is the recommended with weekly tuition. We would then implement the more intense periods of study. If you have shorter timelines, again, it would have to be a more intense program of study where possible to really assist your child. Now on to the similarities and differences between the tests. So this is where it can get very confusing for parents and children. It isn't very clear when you go to search the information, and there's also not a lot of information available on the tests or examples of how they're different. So on the board, you can see in the table, we've got CAT4, ISEB, UKISET, and the 16 plus. Now, those that are highlighted, they are where the key differences are. So you can see across CAT4, ISET, and UKISET, your child will need to be learning verbal reasoning and non-verbal reasoning. Now, there are elements of school life where they may learn parts of this, but on the whole, this comes as an entire new subject and way of working for your child. It's very much designed to test how your child can logically deduce and come to answers themselves. Okay, so it is on the whole a very new area. It's more about logic, processes of elimination and deduction to answers. And we're going to give you, well, Larissa is going to show you examples of these shortly. Within ISEB, it's more of a traditional route in that they test maths and English. And this is because the ISEB is tailored towards year 6 and year 7. So the majority of ISEB examinations are targeted towards the 11 plus. So your child would sit them in year 6, but there are some schools that do like to use the ISEB for the 13 plus exams, and they propose that your child sits them in year 7. So they'll either sit them in year 7 or year 6. Year 6 is to gain entry to year 7, but for year 9 entry, they like to do it slightly earlier at year 7. But the majority of students will be sitting that as a candidate for year 7. Okay, so they'd sit it within year 6. CAT4 implements 2 other areas of reasoning. They are very much focused to reasoning and logic. So it's quantitative reasoning and spatial reasoning gets added in, which we also have examples to show you so you have more of a familiarity with this. Now, the UKISET is all targeted mainly towards English with some elements of reasoning. So overall, they call it the reasoning section. It will only be one exam, whereas CAT4 and ISET, you have two separate tests for verbal and non-verbal. UKISET combines it together, but it's still covering the same type of question. You also have then what we call the Cambridge English test. Now, this is a reading and listening test. They tend to start the listening part of the exam first, where they have to listen to quite a lot of information, absorb that information, and then answer questions on it in a timed manner. The UKISET test, the Cambridge English test, is an adaptive test, so it adapts to the student. So as your child will go through it, what it sees is if they've got that answer right, if they got that answer wrong, they will then adapt the next question where they see fit, because they're trying to get an overall impression of their current level of study. Then within the UKISET, you have an essay writing element. Now, the main area that students struggle with here is trying to put in their thoughts into a 30-minute essay topic and structure it well. So that again can be quite a different area of study. UKISET is sat from about the age of 9 up to 18. So questions get changed along that process dependent on their age and ability. So the questions that come for, say, 16 plus, they can be quite difficult for children to get a grasp of how to approach them. And there are various techniques to work on with that. When it comes to the 16 plus, things start to work a little bit differently, very much dependent on the school and the country that your child would be applying from. So they can go for a mixture of entrance examinations. So they may have just purely subject-based, based on your choices for sixth form. So if your child is choosing 4 subjects, they may actually decide that they would like them to sit entrance exams in all 4 subjects. Sometimes they actually only want them to sit them based on 1 or 2. They may bring in a maths or English element as well. That is mostly probable. They do tend to do that. Then they may test reasoning skills via CAT4, or they may test English skills via UKISET. So there's a variety of approaches there, and at 16 plus you tend to sit more exams per school. But it's very much dependent on the school itself. Half the battle with these exams is familiarization with the questions, the type of question, the format. Online, there isn't very much available for students to become familiar with what to expect when they sit the exam. And especially the format and style of questions, they struggle with how they should approach them, touched upon the fact that reasoning can be a whole new element of study for your children. So that's where the struggle comes in. So understanding what skills they need to apply really is key to success in answering these. And there's lots of approaches that can be taken tailored to how your child works, that we can work with them to be able to gain success with these examinations. So that I know with this there is a lot of information, but hopefully you can see with the highlighted elements, those are where the differences lie. 16 plus is just a very much varied approach as well, dependent on the school itself. So understanding the description of skills that are being tested, this is where we want your children to be comfortable and confident in knowing what question is being asked and what skill they need to apply. Now, schools very much say we don't expect children to prepare for entrance exams, but if we were to take that approach, our children would be at a disadvantage because everyone's going to prepare for these. They need to prepare their maths and English. It definitely needs to be at the top of their game. They need to be able to stand a chance against everyone else who's applying, and everyone will be preparing. So there is conflicting advice on that, and schools want to test their ability, current ability, and they never suggest to you that you should intensely prepare, but it is well known that everyone does go through rigorous preparation because we are competing against the globe. Essentially, we want our children to stand the best chance. I did touch on the fact that there's not many resources available. Those that are available aren't free, and to be honest, on accessing online, you don't know who's necessarily produced those resources and their background as tutors. It's much better to take an approach of being open to a system of tutors that have worked with these students before, that have gained entrance into boarding schools. They know the systems well, they know what's going to be asked, and we have a wealth of knowledge in the types of questions that are going to be asked. So there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to learning these new skills that are required for the entrance exam, and there isn't a set way stated anywhere from schools or online as to how we should approach the questions, and that's where we all work together to see how your child's mind works and to help them then implement the skills required. Another key area that children struggle with is the language barrier in communication. So through longer preparation, they're communicating with UK teachers. They then get more familiar with any barriers that may present, and they can have a deeper understanding and being familiar with the types of questions that are presented to them, how we ask them, what exactly we mean with asking that question. So that can be really helpful too. So our approach is to teach your child how to understand what that question is really asking. The more they become familiar with the different types of question, they will know what type of question they are encountering, the format, and then they can see, right, I need to implement this to be able to answer this question. So we demonstrate the thinking process that we go through step by step within our questions, and we engage the students with that. There's lots of tips and tricks, and I'm sure that all tutors here have very different tips and tricks. They have lots available. I certainly know that when I go into a class, one way that we would approach a question might not trigger something within that child. So then we go to the next approach. It's all about finding how their mind works, what works best for them, so that we can solidify the content and embed the content so they know exactly what to do going forward. So it's really important that there's a flexible approach. We want to feel confident that we've gone through something and your child really understands why that's the case and how to answer that question going forward. Okay, so now we have various types of questions that your child may encounter. Well, they will encounter certainly across the different examinations. So I'm going to hand over to Larissa to show us these questions.
Thank you very much. So we're starting off with verbal reasoning, which, as mentioned, is tested in CAT4, the ISEB, and the UKISET. And it's very much testing your grasp on language and trying to make connections between words. And in this question specifically, it's asking, well, I'll just read it out. It says the following question is a verbal classification question. Verbal classification questions introduce 3 words that share a certain connection. You must choose a word from the answer choices that share the same connection. Right? So the 3 words they've given us are read, calculate, and swim. So I'll give everyone a moment to see if they can work out the answer for themselves. And if anyone, has an answer, you can put it in the chat, or I'll explain it in a moment. It's very much thinking about what ties these words together and what makes them different to the options they've given us. So I think everyone's had a think about it. So we can see in read, calculate, and swim, these are all verbs. Right? These are all things that we can do. They're action words, right? And if we look at the options they've given us, see, bike, abilities, feel, and dream. Well, they're all, abilities, I wouldn't say is a verb, or the others are, but abilities isn't a verb as well. So we'd sort of eliminate that option. It doesn't fit in. And then we'll have see, bike, feel, and dream left, right? They're all verbs. And we need to think about what makes them different, or how can we categorize them away from read, calculate, and swim, right? So things such as see and feel, I would say that these are part of our senses, right? So hearing, tasting, smelling, seeing, touching, these are all, sort of our part of our senses. Recalculating and swimming isn't really a sense. It's not something that you just do, right? So I think see and feel, I would say, are not correct. And we're left with bike and dream. Again, dream is something you do quite naturally. It's not something you learn. It's not something you practice. It just comes to you, right? Whereas read, calculate, and swim are all learned abilities. These are things we practice. And it's the same with bike, right? So that's how we know that bike is the correct answer. But with this question, you very much just look at all the options and try and eliminate them one by one, because it may not be clear immediately which one is the correct answer. Okay, so that's verbal reasoning. And then we'll move on to nonverbal reasoning, which I think for a lot of students, especially for my students, it's a new concept, doing questions where it's just shapes and not words. But it's very fun. And in this question, it gives us, nonverbal reasoning is tested in CAT4, ISEB, and UKISET as well. So it's very important, actually. And in this question, they've given us 3 different shapes, and we need to pick one of the 5 below that matches the shapes. I'll let you guys have a think. And with nonverbal reasoning, there are loads of ways that you can tackle it. I often give a list of things that you can look at with my students. So things such as the number of shapes, for example, or the size of the shapes, or the number of sides of each shape, or the color, or the location of where it is on the page. There are a multitude of things you can look at in nonverbal reasoning. And it's quite good for students to actually just go through that list if they're struggling with it. Just go through it and see if they can find out what the difference is. For this question, I feel like it's pretty straightforward, I think. Each shape has 3 different shapes and size, and they're all overlapping each other. And one of the distinguishing factors as well is they all are differently colored, right? So at the top we have a black shape, and then a gray shape underneath, and then a white shape on the bottom. So once we've established that, we just look at the answers. The first one isn't correct because it's gray on top. The second one is incorrect because it's all white. The third one looks kind of correct, but the white ones in the middle, but actually needs to be at the bottom, right? The fourth one, black, gray, white, perfect, right? So we think that fourth one is the correct answer. But I always tell my students, don't just stop there. Check all of the answers in case you've made a mistake or something. We look at the last one, again, that's not correct. It's all jumbled up and wrong. So that's when we can decide that the fourth one is definitely the correct answer. And this question's all about finding patterns and stuff. Yeah, and then on with quantitative reasoning, which is only tested in the CAT4. It's all to do with numbers, right? Testing your mental maths, finding patterns in maths. And this question's actually pretty tricky, I would say. They're giving you 5 numbers. You want to identify what the fourth one is, because it's especially y'all have a think. See if you can find out what it is. With quantitative reasoning, it's a lot about finding a pattern. In this case, it's a sequence. We have a series of numbers, and the first thing to do, I would say, is to see if you can find the difference between the numbers, right? So from 1 to 12 is a difference of 11. Okay, that's fine. 12 to 45, it's a difference of 33. So 11 and 33, how can we tie these numbers together, right? So 11, the difference between 33 and 11 is 22. Okay, that's fine. I would say that, the most distinguishing thing to note is that 33 is a multiple of 11. So we multiply that by 3 to get 33. So I'd say, okay, let's try it out. It's almost like a trial and error, right? You try to find a rule. So if we multiply 33 by 3 again, we get 99. Okay, so that might be the next difference in numbers. So we add 99 to 45, and that gives us 144. Lo and behold, it's one of the options, right? But we can't just say that that's correct. We can double check. So we try and work out the next number. So 99 times 3 is 297. And we add that onto 144, and we get 441. That's how we know we've got the correct answer. It's very important for students to double check and make sure that they do all the steps in the question to ensure that they've got the right answer. Okay. And then one of the last reasoning sections is spatial reasoning, which we cannot see on the screen. Aha, there we go. Spatial reasoning, I think, is one of the most fun sections. It's all about using your imagination, and it's all using your brain. And it's also a concept that's quite new to students in terms of applying academically. It's something that I think my students at least really enjoy doing, actually. And in this question, it's all about folding paper and punching holes in it. You must decide how the paper would look when it is unfolded, and choose which of the 5 squares beneath the folded squares shows how the paper would look when it is unfolded. Okay? So I've told you that they fold it once, twice, again, and then punch 2 shapes inside. So I'll let everyone have a think. We've got 5 options. And with this question, it's, as I said, it's a lot to do with your imagination and not actually working through it systematically, but just really just imagining it, right? So I tell my students to quite literally just imagine you're folding a piece of paper up, cutting 2 holes in it, and you're unfolding it, right? You unfold it once. The revealed panel would show a triangle and a circle, and the triangle would be facing the right-hand side, right? And we unfold it again. The second panel would actually show a mirrored image of the first one, right? Because we're doing this motion, aren't we? So the triangle and circle would be sort of like that, and the triangle would actually be facing to the left. Unfold it again. Same thing, but the triangle is facing the right, and the last panel, the triangle would be facing to the left. So that tells us that option C would be the correct answer, because the triangles are all on the top, circles all at the bottom, or of the page, and they're sort of mirror images each time. Okay, so it's all about just using your imagination here and literally just doing it in your head, right? And then the last sort of part is essay writing, which is only in the UKISET. I think for a lot of students, essay writing is very daunting. I remember it being very daunting for me, but once you have a structure and once you're used to writing in a structure, it's like your pen just flies on the paper. It's the easiest thing, right? So this question is asking us to write an essay in 30 minutes and talking about whether the advantages of the introduction of mobile phones in society outweigh the disadvantages. You have to decide if you agree or not, right? I'm sure everyone has an opinion of mobile phones. It's a hot topic already. Um, and when I teach my students, I allow them to have whatever opinion they have. I think it's just important that they can. And before students write, I think it's absolutely vital that they spend about, well, we've got 30 minutes here. So I think spending about 5 to 7 minutes just planning it makes it so much easier to write whatever you want to write. So I advise my students get a piece of paper and just write down, what points do you want to make in your essay? And I think with a question like this, it's also easy to just say, oh, I think mobile phones are the best thing in the world, and just writing all the good things about it. But you actually want to, well, it's important that you provide both sides of an argument. You don't want to just say all the good things or say all the bad things. You need to just show that you have an understanding of everything. So writing a list of advantages and writing out a list of disadvantages in your plan is great. Once you have that done, you can get started with the essay writing. Start with an introduction, say something like, oh, mobile phones has been so important in our society. We start off with the big ones that you carried around, and now we've got all these digital tiny touchscreen ones, right? And then you can follow up by saying, oh, I agree or disagree that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. And then you want to start off talking about all the advantages, whatever they may be, backing them up with elaborating a bit, and maybe backing them up with your own experiences or experiences with someone else. Once you talk about all that, you can talk about the disadvantages, right? Things, well, for example, I mean, cyberbullying is a big problem with mobile phones. And you might say, oh, mobile phones are, the cyberbullying is really bad. However, there are actually loads of measures to counteract cyberbullying, such as reporting or flagging users online. So it's important to elaborate on your points here. And once you talk about the disadvantages, you can give a brief conclusion, reiterate whether you agree or disagree, and then that's. But I think essay writing, it's so important not just to just write and practice your English, but actually practice persuasive, as it says on the page. When it comes to university level, I know academic debates is such an important part. And I think that all the skills, verbal, non-verbal reasoning, whilst it's good to practice for the exams, they really transfer into all aspects of learning and your future learning and future jobs as well. So I think that's just a brief outline of all the different types of things.
Thank you, Larissa. That's really
Thank
helpful.
You.
Okay, so now what we're going to have a short discussion about is the interview process. Now, there's a lot of challenges that come with the interviews. So your children may not have encountered this type of interview before, and it can be quite a daunting experience for them. So they don't know what questions are going to be asked. They don't have the experience with being interviewed. And it can be quite intimidating being put forward with a grown-up or a panel of grown-ups to be interviewed. And they're not sure how to approach the answers to the questions, as well as there being, perhaps in some instances, a language barrier. So it's a completely new realm yet again for your child. But there are lots of solutions available, and we target them towards each individual child, what they need assistance on. So understanding, first of all, why that interview is important. I always like to put your children at ease by explaining, yes, you are interviewing for a place at that school, but you also, in a way, are interviewing that school yourself. You're making sure it's a right fit. And a traditional question that gets asked actually by boarding schools is, are you applying to other schools? Now, a lot of children say and panic and say no. Now, we definitely don't want them to say that answer. They need to be honest, say, yes, I am applying for X, Y, and Z. The main intent of that question is actually for the boarding school themselves to know exactly who their competition is. And it's super helpful then for your child themselves having told them, because it can impress upon the school as well. So it is more of a two-way stream than what your child actually thinks. So they get to have a chat with the headmaster and other people from that boarding school, and they can create an impression as well. And usually you find that they become more at ease. It's more, they do take a friendly approach. I think children are quite worried that it's going to be very tense, but it really isn't. So we have ways of speaking with them, making sure that they understand that it isn't as scary as they might think. And through practice interview sessions, they tend to relax. So that interview also allows them to make a great first impression. So it's their chance to tell the school why they're excited about going to the school and how they can contribute to the school. So we work with your children to get them to understand what questions are asking. So some of the ways in which questions get asked, children can interpret in a different way. So we overcome those barriers. Underpinning all of this, there's a way in which children can answer questions and consistently show their academic ability, as well as bringing in constant skills. The key approach is we want your child to come across as a well-rounded individual. So not just academic, but has other sporting, music abilities, things like debate club, any experience that they have, we bring in. And consistently through their answers, we want certain skills to be coming through constantly. And that gives the impression of a well-rounded individual then. There are learning techniques that we use to allow them to demonstrate agile thinking, and we have extensive lists of past interview questions. So we are very familiar with what types of questions are going to be asked, and we really want your child's personality to shine through. We want them to make sure that they really are selling themselves, what they've done academically as well as via extracurricular. So the school sees it as a chance to get to know your child, but likewise, it's really important for your child to get to know that school, and you can become happy in knowing that it's a good fit. So this is also a key opportunity to ask questions to the school. Now, at the end of an interview, the interviewer or panel of interviewers will ask, do you have any questions for me? Now, it's very important that our children go in well prepped with questions specific to that school that they can't find the answers to online to ask. So that shows huge enthusiasm for the school, as well as they can ask any questions that they might have. So that's where we've put the chance to detect if the student's done their homework. Now, when your children are perhaps interviewing for 3 different schools, it is important that they spend the time to really research into the schools and that they become familiar with them. So there's certain areas that they should be aware about, such as academic results, history of the school, anyone of any prestige that has been to that school. And then they want to start taking the approach of matching themselves into that school. So if the school offers tennis club and they are a tennis enthusiast and they're willing to get involved with competitions, they need to start showing that fit. And that's what we do throughout the questions and teach them how to do that. So there's a list of questions that and areas that are likely to be covered. So the child's family background, usually at the start of the interview, to settle your child in, they will ask them about themselves and their family, favorite subjects, hobbies, interests. A very popular question is, tell me about a book you've recently read. So these are some of the questions that perhaps your child might not be used to answering or expect to see. Areas of the news get covered, UK culture, why they want to come to the UK, and they want to get an overall impression about personality and character. The way we approach these is never just by saying yes or no. We want your child to be speaking fluently for about 60 seconds minimum. On some questions, that's slightly longer. So it's getting them into the mode of being able to speak fluently for that length of time. So we do this with helping them understand what the question is asking, and we have very clear approaches of how to approach what we call negative questions. So an example of a negative question would be, tell me about your weakness. What do you think your weakness is? Now, we don't want your child to just say their weakness. We want them also to choose something that isn't too deterring for the school, but we want them to be able to say, yes, I recognize that I have a weakness, that I'm doing X, Y, Z to overcome this weakness and make myself a better person. And I know I will be able to do that. So there's all different approaches that we can take across these different questions with your child to help them prepare, relax, demonstrate their personality. We just want them to really shine through during that interview process. So we use a framework called REAL and PESC and how we answer questions. So making sure that we answer questions, or your child answers questions, with huge levels of enthusiasm. We want them to show that enthusiasm throughout the interview. We want them to touch on experiences that they've had. For example, if they have been to the UK, they should touch upon it in an answer. They should also approach some of the questions. We'll ask them, for example, recently a question come up about oranges, asking a child if an orange should float in a water if we were to place it into water. So there you would need to use analysis and lateral thinking, so thinking about all different aspects and analysing whether it could or couldn't. So this is a framework we like to use throughout our interview mentoring, and it's been proven to have great success. So how we can help you, it's a very flexible approach. We work very closely with Brains and Butter. They have such expertise in the strategy of choosing and helping you choose the right school for your child. And then we come in with the types of tuition that we can offer. So it can be one-to-one for the different types of school exams. We can do group-based, based on whether, say, we have a group of students going to sit UKISET or going to sit ISET. Scholarship exam preparation, that will usually be tailored to a certain subject. So, for example, maths. So we'd have an intense program of study to, with scholarships, you're looking to excel above the average and be confident in schoolwork that's 1 to 2 years above your average year. Interview preparation, we can help with, and the specialized courses that we touched upon earlier that demonstrate those soft skills. So, for example, we've got courses that help improve expression, boost confidence, get our children to engage within those interviews. And then we have one-to-one or group-based classes that address specific needs. So say we have areas of struggle within creative writing, we can assist in that way as well. So I hope that's gone somewhat in helping to demystify all of the problems with boarding school entrance exams, of understanding the different types, when they get that, and how time management is important as well. So I'll open it up to everyone. Does anyone have any questions for us to answer? Me and Larissa are more than happy to answer any questions at all.
Thank you so much, Caris. Thank you, Larissa. That was really, really informative. I don't know about some of the parents, but when I saw the questions, I had a little bit of a headache. I was thinking, oh my goodness, even with all my trained doctoral mind, I'm cracking my head and trying to work this out. I can imagine how it is for children. So definitely children need to prepare for these examinations. It shouldn't just be something that hits them for the first time when they're sitting exams. And I think two buzzwords that just kept ringing in my ears were prepare and technique. So that was really, really an insightful session. Thank you so much. Now is the time for our parents to ask questions. Please feel free to unmute yourselves, or use the emoji, raise a hand, or just put a question in the chat box, and we'll be very grateful if you can ask your questions on time, because this is being recorded. It's going to be streamed on YouTube, because there's so many of our parents who asked for this and who would want to watch this over and over again. So we'll be really pleased if you can, ask your questions as soon as possible. Thank you. Okay, since everyone has gone quiet, I have two questions that I would like to ask. So a number of our parents didn't necessarily grow up, get educated in a system that taught reasoning, verbal reasoning, non-verbal reasoning. So in addition to the tutorial sessions that tutors will be having with their children, is there anything that parents can do to support those sessions and to help prepare the children?
I would say the main thing that we always need from parents is to help implement practice. So yes, it's great having your tutoring sessions, but the homework needs to be done afterwards. It may only be short pieces of homework, but sometimes if our parents can implement each day, saying, right, sit down and do even 5 minutes of reasoning, because with reasoning, it's such a new concept and the mind has to learn to work in a very different way. Practice each day is so helpful. Even 5 minutes is proven to work. So the assistance from parents in that area is helping us to get our children to do that daily practice. I think parents come in with the preparation, helping implement timings of study, and it also helps with discipline as well and prepares them for boarding school at the same time.
Amazing, thank you. That's really useful to know. And some of our parents are interested in grammar schools, and they want to find out if you offer any tuition for 11 plus or for entry into grammar schools.
Yes, definitely. So grammar schools can take a very, very similar approach to boarding school entrance exams. They tend to have their own exams within maths, English, verbal and non-verbal reasoning. Those tend to be the 4. They may undertake interviews as well. Again, preparation with that in advance, because they have certain registration deadlines as well. So that's key. But yes, grammar school works very, very similar with their entrance exams. Maths and English is always tested with those. So yes, we provide support in those areas as well. It would run very similar to our boarding school entrance exams, as they have such huge similarities.
Thank you so much. And I was wondering, does Larissa have any advice for children? Like if you were to give one tip, what would that tip be for the children?
Oh gosh. I think the big thing, I think, it's such a daunting experience. I think you're doing loads of different questions and it's all very new. So I think trying to stay positive and just practicing,
Mm,
and hopefully they have lots of encouragement as well from family, from school. And I think that's the main thing that I've seen helps children really just excel in this stuff. So just staying positive and practicing, I think, is the biggest tip.
amazing. That is so good and so true. Thank you, Larissa. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, Caris, would you mind having the slide you had on before the Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay, so to our parents and to everyone watching this is really the important bit that you need to really pay attention to. So one thing that I would really like us to understand is that it is a financial investment that you're making in your children, and it will yield a result. Many times our parents get a bit worried and concerned. Oh wow, this is quite an investment, and we understand that, we really do, but it is worth it. It is worth it, and it's worth preparing for. We gave an example of one of our students. Honestly, mom did not miss a bit. Her bill was huge. She paid, and today he's in a great school and he's doing really well. It was worth every penny that she puts in it. And she would say to me how she would drive hours and hours on end, just taking him here and taking him there. So we do make these investments. You're here, you've been watching this, you've been listening to this, or you're watching this on YouTube. You've put in the time, into this. And I know you're preparing to put in your resources as well. And I just want to assure you that it will definitely be worth it. The tutors at Insight Academy are amazing. Like, we can bank on them, and that's why we brought them in front of you. And I just thought to tickle your ears some more if you've been listening to this very point. Now, we typically only take bookings for 10 hours. Like, so if you're going to book a one-to-one tuition for your child, the minimum booking is for 10 hours. However, if you get in touch with Okpayami today being the last day of September, and we're feeling very happy, and we're getting ready for the best part of the year and getting ready for Christmas. If you get in touch with Okpayami, we're happy for you to book 5 hours. As I said, 10 hours is the minimum, but we're happy for you to book 5 hours. And we're not just stopping there. If you do go ahead and say you want to book for 10 hours, we would gladly give you a 10% discount. That is a lot of discount that we are giving, but we just want to help you because we understand that it is quite a financial investment that you're making to book those sessions for your children. And we don't want you to have listened to this, to have watched this on YouTube, and that's the end of it. No, we want to be able to work with your child and help your child. And these skills are really, really useful for your children to have, whether or not they're doing a CAT4 test or not. It is such a useful skill and session to put your children through. So I thought I'll mention that for you to have something to take home with, and make sure you get in touch with Okpayami. She will be dropping. Okpayami, do you want to put your number in the chat box? For those who are watching this on YouTube, you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and we're also on Instagram. So send us a message and we just might be able to secure you a similar offer that we've given to those who are on this call, on this Zoom meeting right now. And if you want to engage in a group-based class and you have some other families with children in your daughter or your son's class, get in touch with us as well, and we will see what we can arrange for you. Once again, thank you so much, Caris and Larissa, and a special thank you to Joyce. Joyce is on the call. Joyce is the brain behind Insight Academy, and she's such an amazing, amazing woman. I've known her for years now, and it's such a joy to just keep working with her. We've worked together for such a long time. So great to have you on the call. Is Joyce showing a video? Let me see before we, hi Joyce, you're in the car. Hello Joyce, it's great to have you on the call. Amazing. Special thank you to the team at Brains on Butter, an amazing, phenomenal team. Thank you to all our parents who have joined this call and those who are watching online. Please get in touch with us. That's the most important bit of this, and be sure to tell your friends as well. So thank you for joining the call. I will stop the recording now.